And I bought that home my first month working there. Huge mansion, 8-car garage, horse riding stables. The price fixing impact would be hundreds of millions of dollars a year. You're going to tell the FBI you're going to do it today, or I'm doing it for you. The FBI said, Mark, if these guys catch you wearing a wire, your life is in danger. They're going to go to prison for 8.5 years. And I tried to take my own life. I can tell you, Christian, that I basically became a free man in prison.
Hey friends, welcome back. This is going to be an epic episode, an interview with Mark Whitacre. Mark Whitacre is a whistleblower of the largest antitrust case in U.S. history. It's an amazing story of corruption, of greed, of transformation, of repentance, of love. So much so that there was a Hollywood movie made after it called The Informant, where Matt Damon plays Mark Whitacre. And please enjoy this remarkable interview with Mark Whitacre. I've been looking forward to this very, very much since we met just recently at this Toolbox lunch here in Austin, Texas, where you shared your story. It's an amazing, amazing story. And I invited you on the show because I think you exemplify both sort of how many of us who are driven, talented, fail, but also the power that we have to change things and to actually change the world as well for the best. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Christian. It was great meeting you in Austin, and I'm glad to be able to do an interview with you.
So, Mark, describe to me sort of the beginning, right? You obviously are a rising star, an executive. You have an amazing education. Obviously, you're talented, and you're this young executive in ADM. Tell me about ADM first, and then what does it describe the ascend to prominence at this early age? I think it was you in your either early or mid 30s, and then the lifestyle that it came with.
Yeah, basically, I went to college 8 years straight from high school, got a PhD from an Ivy League university, Cornell University, PhD in biochemistry. And I was 25 years old when I entered the marketplace, and when the biotech industry was exploding. So a PhD in biochemistry was heavy demand during that time. I remember I was vice president by the time I was 28 years old. And by the time I was age 32, I was divisional president of ADM, Archer Daniels Midland, number 56 on the Fortune 500, 1989. So that gives you an idea of the timing.
Yes.
But divisional president of the biotech division, corporate vice president of the company, had a 75-year-old CEO, a 69-year-old president, and I was 32, and I was the fourth ranked executive, highest ranked executive in the company. The 7 top executives had access to the 7 jets. So I had access to a Falcon 50 anytime I wanted to. Was there for almost 8 years. I bought the CEO's home. It was actually the previous 2 CEOs' home. It was the CEO of John Daniels, the founder of Archer Daniels Midland. And then it was the CEO, Dwayne Andreas, for about 30 years, his home. And I bought that home my first month working there. Huge mansion, 8-car garage, horse riding stables that your kids could ride in an inside arena, corporate jets. I had the 8-car garage filled with 8 cars, Ferrari, 2 BMWs, 2 Mercedes. It was like being Justin Bieber before Justin Bieber.
That is amazing. You're absolutely right. I mean, it is just the Justin Bieber of the business world. That was Mark Whitacre, right? Oh my gosh, that's remarkable.
And I was 32, and
you were married at the time. Did you have kids at the time already?
We did not have kids yet at the time, and we were married. I met Ginger when we were in seventh and 8th grade, and it's just amazing. I mean, so we were married. We were married when we were 21 and 20. We lived in Europe for 4 years, and then I'm at this company with 70 billion revenue, 30,000 employees, number 56 on the Fortune 500, and I'm the 4th ranked executive and half the age of the 3 executives above me.
That's remarkable. Okay, so for the audience, because I know the story, and Uh, remember the name Ginger because she is a prominent hero in the story. I believe she probably deserves a Hollywood movie of her own. But please go on. So you're flying high. You're the Justin Bieber of the business world. How did the FBI come in the picture initially, right? Because I think there was a twist there and a turn. How did they come in, and how did that trigger sort of the events that happened after?
Well, basically, when I joined ADM in 1989 and was already divisional president, the FBI was already there when I joined. They were helping on a Chicago Board of Trade fraud case. So they had an undercover FBI agent working at ADM to help solve a case. So they were helping ADM basically. So the FBI seemed to be there. It's such a large company, and Decatur, Illinois, is such a small town. The FBI was helping ADM. So, I mean, the FBI was nothing new at ADM. Like I said, from the time I started, they were there. And then they were helping with a case for the contamination in one of our plants, which then was affecting my division, the division that I was president of, the biotech division. And the FBI was helping to solve a contamination problem. And I was sharing with Ginger how interesting it was that the FBI is helping ADM, but there's this huge case that they're not aware of, this huge price fixing case, this international cartel. And I said, it's interesting. They're helping with these smaller cases, but there's this huge case that's happening right under their nose.
Now, you didn't know about just the extent of the conspiracy at first, if I remember correctly. And as you sort of rose through the ranks and you were sort of nurtured into senior leadership, what I remember is that you were then sort of brought into the inner sanctum, so to say, of the actual price fixing. Is that correct? And how did that
Yeah, I
happen?
was there for a couple of years. So I start there at 32 as divisional president, corporate vice president of the company. By the time I'm 34, the vice chairman brought me a huge bonus back in my office and a check and many shares of stock and he talked and he came back about an hour later. It was at a time that to get bonuses was not unusual. We got bonuses often in
Right.
stock options. That
Yes.
wasn't unusual. But this particular was an odd timing. It wasn't performance related. It wasn't increase in growth or revenues or increase in profits. And then he came about an hour later. I knew what it was for. The
Okay.
bonus. He told me that he saw me as family. That the three executives above me, they saw me as family now. That I'm part of their group, and they wanted to start sharing with me some things that they were doing because my age was half their age. So
Mm-hmm.
eventually they would like to mentor for me to take over some things that they're doing. And I thought, well, I've been there 2 years already. I know everything that's going on at ADM. And he said, no, there's some things they haven't shared with me yet. And they shared this international cartel, this price fixing scheme that they had going on with their competitors. And now that they trusted me in 2 years with them, they started bringing me into the family and being mentored to eventually take over a huge international cartel.
So, so when they did that, okay, they bring you into the inner sort of circle, essentially, of people who know everything. What was the extent of the price fixing conspiracy,
Oh,
essentially?
it was huge. I mean, ADM 70 billion in revenue, 4 billion in pre-tax profits. The price fixing impact would be hundreds of millions of dollars a year of our profits coming from price fixing, sometimes $1 billion a year.
So up to a
So it was
billion
a
dollars.
significant part. It was a significant part, and it was going on for over a decade before they brought me in. Going on over a decade, even before I was with the company.
So what blew me away was that because you think of those numbers, it's almost hard to fathom, right? I mean, up to $1 billion. It's hard to wrap your mind around it, but the impact. I think if you describe the impact on sort of the domino effect, I think it will help people understand what this means because ADM essentially produced and produces a lot of the major ingredients of most of the stuff that are processed foods, correct? So they
They are
were
one of the largest food additive companies in the world. When someone buys a processed food or beverage in the grocery store,
right.
a Kellogg cereal, Pillsbury, Kraft, a Coca-Cola and iced tea and orange juice, likely some ingredients in those ones I just listed, likely something from ADM. It's difficult to buy a processed food or beverage that does not include something from
ADM.
ADM, one of the
Yeah.
largest in the world.
So basically, the price fixing was stealing money essentially downstream from all these producers and companies who were providing goods for the world, the planet, correct?
Yeah, but in reality, it probably even impacts the consumers, everyone that goes to the grocery store,
Right.
because when a Pillsbury or Kraft or Kellogg's pays higher for their ingredients, that gets passed on to the consumer. Their profit margins built in. So if they have to pay higher for ingredients or higher for their box, for example, that's gonna get past the consumer. Consumer's gonna pay a higher price. So
Right.
in
Of
the
course.
end, the consumer was paying this $1 billion a year or these hundreds of millions of dollars a year.
So you find that out and you come home and you now Ginger enters the stage, in a very dramatic way. So to me, I was just blown away, honestly, by her reaction. What did she say to you, and what did she make you do? I think almost immediately, right?
Yeah.
Within days, at
Well,
the very at
well, first first they gave me a bonus, and then they brought me into the family. Then
right.
they started mentoring me for about 7 months to take
Hmm.
over the price fixing scheme before I shared with Ginger,
Okay.
because she was busy and busy with the kids. At this point, we did have kids at this point, and she's busy with our children. We had a baby, plus we adopted 2 kids right the same year we had the baby. So we went from no kids to 3 kids. So she was busy at that point. So I didn't share with her. And really she wouldn't understood that much about an international cartel or price fixing or antitrust laws. But a few months later, she did notice some things have changed about me. She knew me since she was in 7th grade and I was in 8th grade. So she knew me since a teenager, and
Wow.
she knew something was weighing heavily on my heart. And I shared with her, it's interesting that the FBI is working with us. It seems like since I started with a company, solving little things, and we have this huge crime right under their nose. And I shared that with her. And I tell you what, I did not expect the reaction that I got.
So, needless to say, if you marry well, that's going to define your life in many ways. Okay, so what did she say?
Well, she said, well, tell me more about it. Let me kind of understand it. And I shared with her about how we were fixing the prices with our competitors, and they've been doing it for over a decade, that I've been involved about 7 months because of my age. I'm being groomed to take over this international cartel where the company earns hundreds of millions of dollars, sometimes $1 billion a year from that. And and she started asking questions like, well, who pays that extra $1 billion here? And I told the consumer pays higher prices for their foods. And she
Hmm.
started reflecting on her grandma and Social Security, her dad working at a Ford Motor plant, and how groceries is one of their major expenses. And she was really troubled by it. And so she kept asking more questions and asking for more. And then she started challenging me. Why would I get involved with a fraud? And then she asked this question. She said, Mark, is this illegal? And I said, well, it's not illegal, but I'm told that everybody does it. It's the way business is done. And that changed everything.
So you did say it was legal, or did you say it was illegal, but
Yeah.
everybody does it?
Yeah. I told her it was illegal,
Okay.
illegal. When she
Yeah.
asked me that question, she asked me
Sure.
that question point blank. But I said, everybody does it, and they've been doing it over a decade. That's when I could tell her demeanor tremendously changed.
And I think I remember you saying that when the executives who were grooming you into this new role, they sort of made you believe that, well, those laws, the people that pass the laws, they don't know anything about business and they're incompetent. Something along those lines, sort of to rationalize the illegal activities that were going on, correct?
Yes, they for sure talked that way. They said, look, these laws are antitrust laws are from the 1800s. Politicians knew nothing about business back then. They don't even know much about business today. They said
Hmm.
politicians, they should not even be laws on the books. They said you can't be in the commodity business without doing this. So I'm thinking this person's been a CEO for 30 years. They know a
Right.
lot more than me that's been out of college less than 10 years. So I thought this is just a way of doing business. And I tried to share it with Ginger in the same manner. but she wasn't buying it.
She wasn't buying it. Yeah. But I mean, it must be this. I'm trying to put myself in your position, right? You are literally the Justin Bieber, right? Like you're the luckiest man in the world. You're on the ascent. You're flying. You are making tons of money, living in this
Seven
massive home.
figures with bonuses.
Exactly. You're massive amounts of money. Uh, I mean, if that clashes with your conscience, it's helpful, quote unquote, when somebody says, yeah, sort of soothes your conscience a bit and goes, yeah, that's actually not that bad, it's not that bad. Was that sort of an internal wrestling within you that also took place?
Yeah, it was, but I couldn't think of any place at 34 years old, even at
Right.
32 when I started, that I could ever earn that kind of income, live in a mansion that the two previous CEOs lived in, fly around on a jet.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the next CEO or COO because they're double and almost triple my age. So I'm already number four. I'm going to eventually be the number one or two eventually.
Exactly. Yeah,
And I
exactly.
just couldn't imagine leaving. And I thought, well, these guys know more about it than me. They've been in
Right.
business for 40 plus years. And I just rationalized. And Ginger wasn't willing to rationalize. She said, it's fraud, it's illegal, and we're going to really talk about this in a serious way.
So did she actually involve the FBI and sort of said, this is what's happening?
Where she did this, Ginger did this. She was so troubled by it. She said, Mark, she'd rather be homeless than live in a home. And we're living in a mansion. Our kids are in private schools, earning with bonuses $2 or $3 million a year with our stock options and bonuses. And she said she'd rather be homeless. She was going to go back and pray about it. She was a Christian. She became a Christian at 30. She would have been 33 then. I would have been 34 when this happened. And she said she was going to go back in her study and pray about it, which I could not connect with at all, what she was talking about then. And she went back and prayed literally for a couple hours. And she came back and she said, Mark, you're working with the FBI. They're helping with your, as we had in the earlier part of the conversation, they were helping us on smaller cases. And she said, Mark, you're going to tell the FBI what's going on this huge, massive case, fraud case. You're going to tell the FBI you're going to do it today, or I'm doing it for you. And I tell you, I've known her since she was 13, and I knew she meant it.
That's a good woman right there. Wow.
And she didn't back down. We argued for a couple hours about it. She was not backing down. We're telling the FBI today, or she's telling them. There was no way to talk her out of it.
That is just remarkable. So you are with the FBI, and I think I remember you telling that she was there just to make sure you don't omit anything and don't.
Right. And I admitted everything in the beginning.
That is awesome. That is such a great story.
I'm saying they got so many things to do. They got drug dealers to take care of.
Right, right.
I'm the last person they want to talk to. And they asked how much money's involved. And I said, boy, they got so many big cases to be taken care of. And Ginger said, $1 billion. And he said, $1 million. She said, no, $1 billion. And then he started saying, how long is this going on? And I said, you got drug dealers on the street, all these things to take care of in the city. And Ginger said, it's been going on for 12 years. I mean, the truth came out, and then he saw this as a massive case right under his eyes.
Oh my gosh. So basically you were essentially trying to talk the FBI down from making it a big deal, right? Which is really remarkable.
I'm trying to get him to go away.
Yes, I know. And she just wouldn't have it, right?
Yes.
So then what happened, I think, it was that you had a choice of either going to jail for fraud or wearing a wire and having some sort of immunity, correct?
Yeah, maybe not go to jail yet, but to be arrested that day or wear a wire after talking for almost 4 hours, bringing
Yeah.
out all the details of this massive antitrust price fixing cartel. And I chose to wear a wire, so I met them the next day. Eventually, I worked with 4 FBI agents, 2 at a time, and I get wired up at 6 every morning. They shaved my chest, put microphones to my chest, had a tape recorder on my back with an athletic band, another tape recorder in a notebook, another tape recorder in a briefcase. And I got wired up and wore a wire every day for 3 years, from 1992 to 1995.
How do you live with that? I mean, what is your emotional state doing this every single day for years.
Oh, I was falling apart. I mean, I lost massive amount of weight. People thought I had cancer. I mean, I looked like at 34 years of age, I was looking like I was 54 or 64. I mean, I was falling apart. I was blowing the driveway off at 3 in the morning during thunderstorms with gas leaf blower because I couldn't sleep. The FBI said, Mark, if these guys catch you wearing a wire, your life is in danger. They could kill you. And to hear that 2 or 3 times a week for 3 years, I was falling apart emotionally and physically, literally falling apart.
Can you tell me, just to add a layer of context here on the kind of danger you were actually in,
Yeah,
how highly connected were the people orchestrating this?
oh, these are people that are, some of them were billionaires. The CEO of ADM was a billionaire and owned 5% of the 56th largest company in America. That was the largest single shareholder. 5% of a $70 billion company is a large holdings. He was the largest shareholder. He was best friends with President Clinton. He flew to President Nixon's funeral on President Clinton's plane. Picked up the phone and could call up the last 2 or 3 presidents before President Clinton. This was a very connected, a billionaire that was connected around the world. He was good friends with Gorbachev, even.
That is just remarkable. So, so what happened? Did they go to jail? Did anybody go to jail?
Oh yeah, almost all of them went to jail. It was a huge trial, a
Hmm.
7 week trial. Some people in Japan didn't show up for the trial, but they're convicted felons. So they're fugitives. If they show up in the U.S., they would be immediately arrested.
Okay.
They didn't show up for the trial. Some of the ones international, some of the ones in Switzerland, like from Hoffman LaRoche, that we were fixing prices on citric acid, did fly from Switzerland and do their prison time in the
Really?
U.S. Only the ones in Japan that did not do their prison time. Almost all the ones in the U.S. Um, did prison time for price fixing. Our CEO, who was the most connected, he was close friends with President Clinton. He was the only one that really didn't do any time, but he was so connected, he did not do any time.
How
And
did he get off? It was a just sort of pleading ignorance, or was it some sort of clemency from a president?
well, what they do, they have he was a target. He was on the tapes and the videos. But with Clinton and with the Justice Department, he was so connected. They do what's called a pass, which you can take someone off. It's almost like a pardon before an indictment. You can
Really?
have someone taken off the indictment list, and he was taking off the indictment list. He was.
Oh
So
wow.
even before even the charges, even before prison time, it's almost like it's called a pass. It's almost like a pardon before indictment. And he was
Did
taking off the indictment
is he
list.
required to give something in exchange for that?
No, not required at all. Usually, when something like that happens in most presidencies, usually they give you a lot towards your campaigns, usually a lot towards your library. And he
Hmm.
did. He was one of the biggest donors for political campaigns, including for President Clinton, one of the largest out there. I mean, a huge donor
Th-
for that.
Does
So
that
he was
strike you?
very politically connected.
Does that strike you as literally legalized corruption? I mean,
Yeah, I think today it would probably be more difficult. This is 30 plus years
sure,
ago,
sure,
but
right.
today would be pretty difficult. He is the one that introduced Gorbachev to Reagan, so he had political significance. So I think they felt that he did more good than bad
Got
because
it.
he is known historically to introduce Gorbachev to Reagan, President Reagan, and he's also one that was indicted even during the Watergate from some of the money that was given to the Cuban burglars, some of the cash that was stuffed in envelopes.
Oh, so that
He was
wasn't his first
indicted.
rodeo, huh?
Yeah, he was indicted for that,
Oh
but
my gosh.
he claimed negligence. That he didn't know what the money was being used for, and who wouldn't give money to a U.S. president to
Right.
to assist. So he was not convicted in the Watergate scandal, even though the cash was from him in that scandal.
So that went down, and I think obviously this is a massive deal, right? Uh, it's probably the highest antitrust in U.S. history, case in U.S. history. Am I
Yeah, I
correct
think there's
about
been
that?
a couple bigger since, but by that time it was for sure the largest
Right.
price fixing case in U.S. history. I think there's been a vitamin case that became larger since then, in the
Hmm.
last 30 years, but at the time it was by far the largest in history.
So in obviously in the eyes of the public, in the eyes of the FBI, you are a hero. You deserve, at the very least, immunity, if not a medal, right? As a whistleblower.
And the FBI was doing that. They were so appreciative. They got a full immunity agreement signed for me never to be charged, even though I was 7 months involved with the crime before I shared it. So they got me a full immunity agreement for risking my life for wearing a wire, and so yeah, they were giving me full immunity as long as I stayed out of my own way
So
and
how
didn't
did
do
you
it.
not stay? How did you how did you blow that chance?
Yeah, I tell you, it was so much pressure and I wasn't thinking clearly. And I looked at that house and that 8 car garage and those cars and those riding stables. And I just couldn't imagine walking away from that. And I thought, well, who's going to hire someone at this point? I'm still in my 30s. Who's going to hire someone that wore a wire for 3 years against their own company? It'd be easier to get a job as a felon than it would be, wearing a wire against your own company. So I thought my career was going to be over for a while. I'm going to have to rebuild my life. I looked at all the stock options that I could not exercise yet because I wasn't there long enough. Some of these stock options were 5 years. There was about $9 million that I could exercise if I was there for another year and a half. Um, the case was coming to an end. The FBI was clear I was going to be fired when ADM learns that I'm the informant, that I'm the mole in the case. And so I wrote 5 checks for myself. I wrote $9 million. I was thinking these stock options that I had signed by our chairman of the company would be my justification that the company owed me that. But the SEC regulations, you can't exercise stock options a year early. You got to wait till the exercise date and what the stock is that day. So basically, it was a fraudulent way to exercise stock options. So it became a fraud and an embezzlement of the $9 million that I was trying to use my stock options as my justification.
That is so once again, right? This is essentially internal rationalizing of something that you, in your heart of hearts, you know you're doing something wrong, but it's overridden by something else, by
Yeah, I
this.
felt like and even the FBI and my wife kind of understood the logic that they're going
Sure,
to owe me
sure.
this. If I wasn't fired a year earlier,
Right.
they would have owed me this anyway, and I would have received that. But the way I did it, there were so many technical violations. It became a fraud, and my rationalization was I was so addicted to that greed. I was so addicted to that lifestyle. I was willing to write 5 checks to myself and basically I went to prison for that fraud. I
So
had full
didn't you
immunity
have
for
an
5 years.
opportunity to get out and you sort of tore the agreement and said
I
something to
did.
Ginger? Describe that.
Well, I had full immunity. I had full immunity before the 9 million. But even with the 9 million, the FBI was so they were so sensitive about that. They were so understanding. They were so, they knew it was a big mistake. They knew I wasn't thinking clearly, but they felt like me taking me undercover for 3 years, they felt like they had some responsibility why I wasn't thinking clearly, the
Right.
pressure I was under. So they got me basically a 6 month plea agreement for the 9 million. I had full immunity
Right.
before. Then
Uh-huh.
they got me 6 million or
So
six
you plead
months
guilty and you got 6 months.
six
That's a
months. If I
okay.
sign this plea agreement, 6 months for the $9 million crime, which
And
is
you said no.
which is a huge gift. And I was going to sign it. I was praying. I was not praying through it. I wasn't a Christian, but I was thinking through it. My lawyer recommended me to sign it. Ginger recommended me to sign it, and I was so mad at Ginger. I said, Ginger, I've had to wear a wire for 3 years because of you. I'm going to do the opposite you want me to do, Ginger. And I ripped it up, threw it in her face. I fired the lawyer, and
Oh
I
my
went to
gosh.
court for almost 3 years and got 8.5 years instead when I would have had a 6 month plea agreement
Oh.
right in front of me.
Oh, that is just painful, right? Wow. So
Yeah.
so you go to jail.
First, I attempted suicide. I was so depressed.
Oh
With
yes.
it,
Tell
with
me
eight
about
and a half
that.
years, I thought I can't do 8.5 years in prison. if I would have went 6 months, I would have went in at 38 and got out at age 38.
Right.
But by now I'm 3 years older, so I'm almost 41, just shy of 41, and going to go to prison for 8.5 years. And I tried to take my own life. I couldn't imagine. I just was I was hopeless and helpless and tried to kill myself. And it's amazing. I was hospitalized for a month. I was treated for post-traumatic stress disorder. And some of the things happen when you wear a wire for 3 years,
Of course.
heavily medicated. And then I had 7 months before I had to go to prison. And someone showed up at my house, and I'll never forget that day. A
So,
man
so,
showed
so
up.
when you attempted suicide, I believe it was just you sat in your car, you closed the garage and started the car, right?
Yes.
It didn't work out. Somebody found you. Did you pass out? Did you change your
Well, we
mind?
had a groundskeeper that showed up every day almost 8:30 for almost 8 years, that
Hmm.
took care of our 15 acres and our horses and our lawn and our grounds. And he showed up like 8:30 in the morning. And I had a certain garage that was smaller. And being a biochemist, I could calculate how much carbon monoxide
Oh,
you need and
wow.
how long the car. I could calculate all that being a biochemist. So I put it in a small garage that was
Right.
because we had 8-car garages.
Yeah.
So this one was a 1-car garage where the mower and stuff was, because I wanted him to
Ah,
find me, not my wife and children to find me.
got it.
And
Got
so I
it.
calculated it, and I would be passed. If he would have showed up at 8:30, I would have been passed for more than an hour.
Right.
He
Oh,
showed up
wow.
every day, 8:30 for 8 years. And that day, something tugged on his heart, and he showed up at 6:30.
So you were serious when you were planning this
Oh yeah, I
suicide.
wrote a 17-page letter to Ginger, had
Right.
a picture of my Ginger and my family on my chest. And when he found me, I was passed out.
Right.
And literally, the doctor said 20 minutes from already passing away when
Mm,
he found me. So if
mm.
he showed up on time, I would have been gone for an hour.
Right.
I
It
would
would
have
have been
passed an hour
irreversible.
early.
Yeah.
But he
Yeah.
showed up, opened the garage, pulled the car out, let the fumes out. I was unconscious, so I was hospitalized. And I was mad at him because he spoiled my plan. Now I got to go to prison for 8.5
Have you
years because he
thanked them
spoiled.
since then? I'm sure you have, but like
Yeah,
you
I
were
was
mad at the
mad at
moment.
the time, and I thank him now. I've not actually seen him
Oh,
in those
really?
years, but 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But I would thank him for sure today.
What a
I'm
miracle.
so
Yeah.
grateful. But yeah,
Yeah.
he showed for first time, and something tugged at his heart to show up 2 hours early. It just never happened in 8 years.
That's remarkable. Okay, so you go to prison, and then faith comes into your life at some point. T- uh,
Yeah.
tell me how that worked out.
Well, someone reached out to me before I went to prison. He was part of a group called CBMC, Christian Businessman Connection, very similar like Toolbox
Hmm.
Ministries at that event that I spoke at when I met you. Marketplace ministry to equip men to carry out their faith in their work. And he was CFO of a pharmaceutical company. He said, Mark, prison's going to be the beginning of your life, and you're going to find your true purpose in your life with the
Wow.
journey you're ready to start. And that was 7 months before I went to prison. And he discipled me, and he had a wife, a lawyer, and his 5 young kids, and he's CFO of a biotech company, but he still spent hours a week
Oh my
sharing
gosh,
about
that's amazing.
Jesus. It gave
Yeah.
me some hope. For the first time, I seen some hope for the first time in several years. Then I went to prison. In my second week in prison, a guy named Chuck Colson showed up, one
Hmm.
of the guys that was part of the Nixon Watergate scandal. Uh, he was White House counsel under President Nixon in the White House, an
Was he
office
staying
next
in?
to
Was
the.
he in the same prison, or how did you meet him?
No,
How
he
did he
he
find out
was in
about
prison
you?
20 years. He was in prison 20 years earlier in the 70s.
Got it.
He was president of a ministry he started called Prison Fellowship to
Yes,
disciple inmates.
obviously a famous ministry
Yeah,
worldwide, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
one of the largest prison ministries in the world, started by Chuck Colson. And he read
Oh,
about me in the Washington Post,
got it.
and he was not in prison. He was out for 20 years. He became a Christian in prison, and he reached out to me and poured into me. And I had a science block because 8 years of college in the sciences, biochemistry, I had professors say, if you're a scientist, a Christian, you can't be a scientist. If you're a Christian, you can't be in my class. I thought my parents were Christians because they never went to college. They did not know better.
So it's
That's what I
basically Christian equals ignorant,
Yes, is what I thought. I didn't share
uneducated.
that with him, but that's what I thought. And
Hmm.
he helped share with me, Chuck Colson, that first year in prison, that some of the best scientists in the world are Christians, and they're even public, but the university never shared that. Even Albert Einstein wrote an article, only God could create the universe and only God could create man. And those kind of things I never learned at all in those 8 years of college. Never met a Christian professor my 8 years of college.
That's remarkable. So
And he helped me
basically,
break that science block.
so someone reached out to you before you went to prison, and if there was a seed sort of planted
Yes.
in the soil, right, of your heart.
Yeah.
And then when Chuck actually came in when you were in prison, what was the process of transformation there? How did that happen beyond sort of
Well, after
the
a few months of reading all these articles and books, and I remember I read a book by a guy named Don Byerly, a PhD biologist in Minnesota, who was an atheist, and he wanted to prove to the world that God did not exist. And he studied it and researched it. And after years of exhaustive research, he wrote a book titled Surprised by Faith. And
Hmm.
he said, God exists and Jesus is the Son of God. And I finished that book along with all the other books and articles that Chuck Colson shared with me. And I thought, how can you be a PhD scientist and not believe in God? And I became a Christian my third month in prison after really studying everything Chuck Colson was sharing.
That's remarkable. So how did it change the rest of your time
Oh,
in prison?
it
In prison?
changed. I had 8 years yet to do, an 8.5 year sentence. I'm only 3 months in. I got eight
Yeah.
years to do. It was a month after I turned 41, June of 98. And I thought, I said, God, Chuck Colson and Ian Howes both said, I'll find my purpose in my life. But what can be my purpose when I got 8 years of prison yet to do? And then I kept praying about that and praying about that. And I thought, where in the world are people more hopeless and helpless than federal prison? And I started discipling guys one by one with the same materials that Ian Howes, Operation Timothy Bible Study, and the Bible that Chuck Colson gave me. I started sharing with other inmates, and I helped these inmates get their GEDs. And some of the Spanish inmates learn how to read and learn how to write. And they become the most productive years. I can tell you, Christian, that I basically became a free man in prison. And the prison was that addiction to greed before I went to prison.
That's absolutely amazing. I think what you said, something similar at the Toolbox event, is you said I was a prisoner when I was in business and I was free, and I became free when I was in prison. That was such a powerful, powerful realization and truth, actually, right? You were liberated while in jail, and you were freer than you ever were before.
Yeah. And at $20 a month, I'm in prison $20 a month.
Right?
I made millions of dollars over 8 years at ADM. And now I'm $20 a month in a 10 by 10, a concrete floor, no 13,000 square foot mansion with a corporate jet. And I'm in a 10 by 10 with a roommate and a locker. And I became a free man. And God lifted all that burden and said, God said he's going to protect me, and I'm going to learn, and I'm going to find my purpose in my life. And I did. And it was some of the most rewarding years in my life. And it's been rewarding the last 25 years since I surrendered my life to Jesus.
And Ginger never gave up on you, which is, I think, remarkable. I think you mentioned the stats are that there's a threshold of how long you can be in prison, beyond which there's the divorce rates just skyrocket,
Yeah.
right?
It's 78% if you go one day to prison, 78%.
Really?
Divorce rate's 50% average. It's 78% if you go to prison.
Oh
It's
my,
99% the statistics if you serve 5 years and longer.
exactly.
99%. And I was there 8 years, and we're 43 years married.
Oh my gosh. So
Married full time
how did she process that? How did she stay with you? Obviously she visited, right? I get that part, right?
every weekend.
How every weekend for 8 years?
Yes. She
What
moved to
was her
three different
well?
states and lived next to three different prisons.
And she moved to where
Three
you were,
states but lived next to three prisons. Because with good behavior,
right?
an inmate moves to a better prison, and she moved to each place. Every time I got elevated to a better place, she moved to that place.
Oh, that's an amazing woman right there. And then what was her demeanor? What would she say to you? Was
Well, the
she
first few
was she
months,
angry? Was she? I mean, obviously, obviously, she would be angry. She would be justified to be angry. But what was her posture in life? How did she process life like that for 8.5
well, when
years?
she came to visit, and even before I went to prison, she said, Mark, my flesh, I want to run. And she
Hmm.
was really open with me. She said, but God is wanting me to stay. I don't know why yet, but God wants me to stay. And she said, Mark, I'm praying for you. I've been praying for you for 10 years because she became a Christian at 30.
Yeah.
And I didn't become one till right before I turned 41. And she said, my parents been praying for me my whole life. And she said, I'm praying for you. And then I would blame her. I would blame ADM. I would blame the FBI. Even when she visited me in prison, I'd point fingers at everybody. And
Oh,
then that
wow.
June of 98, my third month in prison, a month after I turned 41, when I surrendered my life to Jesus, she'd never forget that time she visited with my kids. And it
Mm,
changed from then, from the last 25 years since. I said, Ginger, I've got no one to blame. And I was in tears. I
mm.
said, I've got no one to blame but myself. No one put a gun to my head and said, be involved with price fixing. I could have walked away from the company, and I should have. And I said, Ginger, I am so sorry what I put you and the kids through. And I apologized to her for multiple weekends and was in tears. And she saw that God was changing me during that time,
Mm.
that my heart was convicted. And she saw how I started helping people, and not about the money. I'm $20 a month, and
Right.
how I help people with no financial reward. And she saw my life change and how I became more of a servant leader instead of a selfish leader. And I tell you, she was glad. She's glad she stayed because she saw that God finally answered her prayers after 10 years praying for me.
That is absolutely remarkable. So you early on, before even before you were released from prison, what I remember is that you were actually approached to consult even as you were in prison. How did that work? Tell me how that works?
Yeah, some of the professors at University at Cornell University were connected to the biotech and pharmaceutical world, and they felt really bad. You know, PhD students, you get to know the professors a lot better than
Right.
someone, you know, in your first 4 years of college. PhD students, you do PhD publications and you do a dissertation, and you get to know them pretty well. And so they had some biotech companies visit me in prison, and because some of these companies had me review their strategic plans and their clinical trials and their patents, and and I got to know very well. And I had some job offers the day I got out of prison, the day I
But
got
how?
out.
But I mean, I'm trying to even wrap my mind around this. How? I mean, the stigma of being in jail for a crime, right? That alone will prevent people from even hiring you when you leave, right? Or these are people that are actually looking you up and pursuing you while you're still in jail. I mean, that must be you're very, very valuable and very, very smart. I mean, that is I've never heard of anything like that.
Well, they gave me a second chance. I joined a company with a Christian CEO, a biotech company in California. That
Mm-hmm.
was that because I wanted to think long. I didn't want to fall back in that greed trap. So
Right.
this Christian CEO named Paul Willis thought so long term. I joined his company, and after a few promotions, I started someone the level right out of college. And
Yeah.
after a few promotions, I became the COO of
Of
that
that
company. I'm
company.
still on the advisory board still today, and I was COO for almost a decade.
Oh, that's absolutely
Financial research
remarkable.
company. It was a miracle. A
And
miracle,
you
but
and
this time doing it God's way.
so tell me this. You told me something when we met. We sat at the same table right before you spoke and right after. Um, that tell me about your current job with the Coca-Cola company, and I never knew this ever. Like literally, I've just learned it from you that there are two Coca-Cola companies actually, and sort of they have been two Coca-Cola companies for over 100 years. Tell us about that and about the faith component of the one you're working with.
Well, basically, Coca-Cola in Atlanta, that's probably the most well-known worldwide Coca-Cola.
Of
The
course.
bottling side split off from that 120 years ago, the bottles and cans. It was all
Mm.
bottles then. Now it's bottles and cans. And I work for that side. I work for Coca-Cola Consolidated. It's been separate for 120 years. It's the largest bottler in America. 102 plants, bottling plants, headquarters in Charlotte, not in Atlanta. We're headquartered. Different CEO. Our CEO is Frank Harrison. Different board. We're on the Nasdaq. Coke Atlanta's on the New York Stock Exchange. Two totally different companies.
But it's still the same brand. It's remarkable. I've never
Same
heard
brand,
that.
same brand, and
Two
still selling the
companies.
same 300 beverages, but two different management and two different ownership.
Okay.
And our purpose statement is for almost 23 years now, our purpose to honor God in all we do, to serve others, pursue excellence, and grow profitably. We have a chaplain in every plant, 102 plant sites, almost 23 years now. Chaplain in every plant, over 100 prayer groups and Bible studies. It is a purpose driven, faith based company. It's
That is
amazing.
absolutely remarkable to me. I've never, like, obviously I've heard of those, and there are many, especially in the States, and I'm sure worldwide. But a company of that caliber, of that, it's one of the top brands on the planet, to be completely openly, across the board, faith-based and purpose-driven, it's quite remarkable to me.
Yeah, even on our website, our only purpose to honor God in all we do by serving others, pursuing excellence, and growing properly. On our pay stubs, on our invoices to our customers, that purpose
Wow.
statement.
So what do you
So
do
we're
for
told about.
that part of the company?
I
Tell me.
lead the T Factor initiative, and T Factor is exactly that: the
Hmm.
faith initiatives in the company, the transformation initiatives. T standing for transformation.
Transformation.
God
Okay.
gave me a chance at another big company, even a company that's a victim of the EDM price fixing case, and gave me a chance, but this time to do it God's way. And we even do, excuse me, we even do events where we share with people that are Christian leaders that are not part of Coca-Cola Consolidated, to share that you do this for God, to integrate faith in your work, but it's also good for business. I mean, our retention rates and our absenteeism and our survey engagement results we get from our employees, our 17,000 employees. It's you do it for God, but it's also good for your business to
So
be
tell
purposeful.
me about how you see that as, let's say, as a scientist, right? Not just a believer, but as a scientist. I believe the same thing, obviously. I'm a Christian, a pastor, and a business guy, an entrepreneur. And I really believe that, and it's remarkable to me how, I don't know if this is a caricature, a cliche of some sort, where business and faith are separate. As a matter of fact, they may be even perceived as something polar opposites. They don't complement each other. But I think there's enough data to show that that is not true. That moral business is not only possible, but it's actually more profitable, more holistic, more healthy, across the board. Can you elaborate on that from your perspective?
Yes, when you integrate the two, I mean, you're taking care of your people. That means you're serving your employees, you're serving your customers, you're serving your vendors. How can that ever not be a win-win? I mean, your vendors love it, your customers love it, your employees love it. I mean, there's no better way to serve your people. Jesus showed us how. You serve, you're going to win when you serve.
Yeah.
And it really should be integrated. They really shouldn't be separated. The best way to run your business is realize it's God's business. God owns it. Psalm 24:1 is clear that God owns it all
Mm-hmm.
and that we're a steward of what God owns and
Mm-hmm.
to manage it like it's God's resources because it is.
It's fascinating that you say that. We're sort of still in the Christmas season. But one of the most famous Christmas stories is about, about Ebenezer Scrooge. And what we omit from that story oftentimes, or maybe just glaze over, is that he was sort of this money grabbing, greedy person pre transformation, pre the T factor, right? And then at the end of the story, it says that he was permanently transformed, right? And he says he was the best father, the best friend, but they also say that he was the best master. Basically, what they're saying is that he was the best business guy. And
We feel that way. That's why we say to honor God in all we do, to serve others, pursue excellence.
mhm.
That means to be the best business guy, to grow profitably, but to do it in God's way. But pursue excellence is one of those part of our purpose statement. To honor God in all we do by pursuing excellence, serving others, growing profitably. So it doesn't mean that you become less of a leader or less of a good businessman. It really becomes you become a better one, a more excellent one.
So tell me, after this whole story transpired and everything, obviously it's a remarkable story. It's almost it's remarkable, Hollywood level remarkable, which is why Hollywood made a movie out of it, right? And so how was your experience with? I think Matt Damon played you. I mean, that you
Yes,
must
he
have
did. My
felt
identical twin, my twin.
your twin. Obviously, he was almost as good looking as you are. So Matt Damon plays you. And
And
how is it? Tell me, obviously we're all curious about Hollywood and things like that. How was that experience? Did you go to the premiere? Did they bring you in alongside? Did they Did they say things to you? How was the interaction with the director,
Yeah,
the
he
actors?
actually had my watch. He had my real business card. He had a couple of the real ties. They
Really?
brought us 6 months in before the movie was released to see the movie along with them. We walked the premiere with Matt Damon and the director. Now the director was is not a Christian, so it's not a redemption story. It's a crime drama,
Right.
and
Yeah.
it doesn't have any of our fate. It ends with me in prison, so it doesn't show the last 25 years of what God's done in my
Yeah.
life since. But we got to share that with them,
Did you?
especially with Matt Damon. We even shared our book, Mark Whitacre Against All Odds, which is what we shared here today, talking with you, our faith journey. We even shared that with him and his wife, Luciana. And I could tell they were blown away by our marriage surviving what it survived. And they knew there was something different about us, especially about Ginger, that could survive that and our
Yeah.
marriage survive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow, that's
So I think it
remarkable.
planted a seed. I think it planted a seed with a lot of them.
That's wonderful. That's one. And you know what? I heard your story obviously firsthand. Then I saw the documentary, which is as sort of the real story, and the FBI agents were being interviewed, etc. And then also saw the informant, which is the Hollywood movie, and I could tell like immediately because I've seen this movie before. I've seen it before. I didn't remember a lot of the details, but I've seen it before, and I remember going, yeah, they're taking a lot of creative liberty here with the story. Like it's a little bit of
Yeah.
a comedy. They make you feel look a little quirky and strange,
Yeah.
and they
And the
omit
FBI and
so
everybody,
much.
they had dilute. And even Ginger, such a serious person, they kind of take the seriousness out of
Yeah,
every role,
it's almost
out of
like a
every,
crime novel comedy
yeah,
genre. I mean, so
yeah.
obviously they can do that, and yeah, they can take liberties. But I remember thinking after listening to you and seeing the documentary, I'm like, yeah, that's not the real story. There's probably there's pieces, there's like highlights of the story, but it's not the real story.
Well, I think the real story is what God took our life from ashes to beauty. And
Yeah.
the story today, I would say, thank God, Ginger says it too. I did not sign a 6 month plea agreement because I would have never listened to Ian Howells. I would have never listened to Chuck
Wow.
Colson. We look back, thank God I did not sign that plea agreement because God gave me exactly what I needed. Ginger thinks the 8.5 years. I think 2 years would have been enough. But I do agree. I do agree that 6 months, I don't think I would have listened to them. I needed to be broken and needed to have all those worldly distractions out of my way and to be humbled
Severe
for me
mercy,
to.
isn't it? Yeah, severe mercy. So, wow, that's just remarkable. And thank you so much for sharing that story with us. And this is the second time I hear it, and you and I have been communicating. It still blows me away. So, before I let you go, if I could ask you for one thing, imagine or people in our audience, people that listen to this podcast and watch it on YouTube, uh, talented, gifted, driven, want to change the world, um, clearly up to great things. What would you say to them when it comes to building a life that combines changing the world and having an impact and having success in life, but also not losing your soul, I guess, right? What would you say, maybe one or two or three tips of how to navigate that properly?
Well, here's what I would say to them. And here's what I would say to my younger self, my 32-year-old self
Yeah.
at the time, that to live a life of significance is so much more rewarding than a life of success. Me helping these men in prison became a life of significance. Even at $20 a month, it became a mission field. It was
Mm.
like I was a missionary, and God used that even during that time. And he gave me the skill set to continue to serve even when I got out almost 2 decades ago, out of prison. So and I think back, people could drive by my house in a mansion with these big iron gates, and I had a corporate jet and a horse riding stables, an inside arena, 8 car garage with a Ferrari and Mercedes and BMWs, 8 cars in that garage. And people say that man has everything. I had a void in my heart the size of Grand Canyon.
Hmm.
After I get a Ferrari, 2 weeks later, I'm thinking, what's next? After I had a Falcon 50, I'm thinking, there's got to be something more to this. What's next? And then I'm in prison at $20 a month. That void was filled.
Hmm.
That it gave me purpose, and a purpose driven for a life of significance is so much more rewarding than how the world defines success. If you chase the things the way the world defines success, it will be an empty life. And that's the track I was on.
I'm so glad you were. Perhaps it took a while, right, for you to get it, but you shifted. And the impact that you're having now, working for the one of the actual companies that your original company was defrauding, um, and having an impact that is at such a large scale, with businesses, with T Factor, with thousands of employees being changed and transformed and inspired. But even more than that, I think the story of redemption, of transformation, is such a powerful story that it's never too late, that anybody can change, and you can have a life of significance that is by far a happier life than a life of just material success and fortune and fame.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the message. That's the journey I've experienced the last 30 years.
Wow, wow, that's wonderful. Well, Mark, thank you for coming on. It's been an honor to meet you and to hear your story and to have you on the show. I really pray that this changes hearts and minds and just trajectories of lives, actually, of someone listening to it. Maybe someone that is sort of making the same mistakes, someone who's just flirting with greed a bit too much. I just really pray that it changes lives.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you for having me.